Welcome to the Trust Show. Once again, we have a guest today, and the guest today is Mark Hunter, also known as the Sales Hunter. Mark is a friend of mine. He has just released a new book just recently. It's called The Making of a Mind for Sale, 33 Strategies for Success. And apparently I have one of the original copies of that book. Uh, you know, the success rate, the stats show that the success rates of cold calls are between 8 to 10%. Used to be 8 to 10% in the 1990s. Now it's 1 to 2% at best. 94% of cold calls go unanswered. Mark is the expert on prospecting. And we're going to talk to him and ask him about these numbers, or I'm going to talk to him and I'm going to ask him about these numbers. But I have to introduce Mark first. Mark is not just the expert on prospecting and sales, I would say in general, but Mark and I met at NSA, the National Speakers Association, when he moved from Nebraska to our small state of Texas. And we had lunch once, and that was one of the most pivotal lunches that I had in my recent career. It was just over a year ago, and I brought up something that I researched back in 2018. I wouldn't even call it research, and that was that people are willing to pay a premium when they buy from someone they trust. And Mark said, I don't think that anybody researched that. And I thought that would be weird. I don't believe that. And I started looking up and I found that nobody really researched that. And Mark really suggested that I pursue that. And that led to a whole new branch of my business that I really get a lot of demand for and pursue a lot in both research and writing and speaking. And that is the Trust Premium. So without further ado, we're going to talk to Mark right after this. Welcome to the Trust Show. I'm Yoram Solomon, your host, the author of the Book of Trust and facilitator of the Trust Habits Workshop. My mission is simple. I want to help you form habits that build your trustworthiness, because the answer to this question will have the biggest impact on your personal and professional success or failure. Can I trust you? And welcome to the show, Mark Hunter, the Sales Hunter.
Thank you for having me on. I think we're going to have a great conversation talking about prospecting and cold calling. Really?
Yes. Actually, I gave a pretty long introduction, and that's all the time we have today. I will see you next. Okay. Mark, define prospecting. First of all, even before define, I really have to thank you. If you heard the introduction, I really have to thank you. That one lunch that you and I had just over a year ago made a big difference in my focus in trust. So thank you.
Well, it's really good because I also paid for lunch too. So, worked out good. You got some ideas.
Yeah, that was double whammy. Mark, when somebody asks me, what does Mark talk about? The first word that comes to mind is prospecting, context of sales, prospecting. Where does it fit in the overall sales process?
Well, first of all, if we don't prospect, who are we going to sell to? I mean, so you really do have to. It's kind of like nothing happens until something's sold, right? I mean, nothing happens in the economy until something's sold. And nothing is sold until you first have a prospect. So prospecting is really incredibly important in the entire sales process. But as your introduction alluded to, it's changed a lot over the years, and it continues to evolve, continues.
So you heard the stats. I mean, today it's less than 2% of cold calls get answered or even lead to the next step. So given these numbers, how do cold calls play into prospecting? What role do they have?
Well, I'm even surprised cold calling has even a 2% response rate. I mean, I'm in sales, and I'll even admit that, because I'll tell you what, my phone rings. If I don't recognize the phone number, I'm not answering it. I just don't answer it, period. So cold calling is dead without a doubt. And what does that mean? It means that prospecting is still happening out there. It's just taking on different forms. It's taking on different structures, and the phone is still relevant, it's still extremely relevant, but it has to be done in a completely different manner than just randomly. Let's just start dialing numbers and see who answers. It doesn't work.
It's even worse. I mean, one of the things that I hate the most, and I don't get why they don't see it, is that sometimes I do answer that call. I do pick up the phone with somebody I don't know. And the first thing that happens is 8 seconds of nothing because my number came up in a system and the system didn't even expect me to answer. And now that I answered, we're trying to find somebody to talk to, and it takes 8 seconds. And I'm thinking about my interest level in this call and how it goes 8, 7, 6, 5, 4. Why do people still do that?
Well, that's so true. But here's the whole thing: the cost of having an automated system that'll call 10,000, 20,000, 30,000 numbers in a day is chump change. And so, companies are still going to do it as long as they're getting a return on their investment. And it comes down to simply this: what you just described, an automated calling system. I am not in favor of them at all. I do not like them. But if I'm selling a mass purchased item, or I have a very controlled database and it's of a lower dollar value where the transaction can be done properly, you can make an argument that the ROI is going to work. The return on investment is going to work. I don't think it's the right way to go, but again, it's very much out there for a lot of companies. A lot of companies use them.
I think it was 2 or 3 weeks ago, I actually recorded a podcast episode where I talked about cold calling. And the thing is that the statistics, the return on investment you're talking about, the statistics actually go down. So the percentage of how do you turn this into an actual call, an actual sale, that number keeps going down. And it goes down for several reasons, not just because of those spam calls or spam emails, but also because of fake deep fakes and other this is, you're no longer just annoying me, you're actually trying to steal my identity to get access to my bank account. So I don't trust the person who's calling me. Even if I did pick up the phone, I don't trust that they are who they are. So tell me what you think, but in my opinion, this number is going down, which means that selling on trust is going up.
Okay, there's two things that you just said there that are so powerful. One, it is going down. So this is why companies in more and more of a desperation feel they just need to do more calling. They just need to call more. I mean, it's this right. It's this reverse psychology. The other thing is because of the advent of AI and all this sort of stuff, and the fact that it is automated, that's the yang. Salespeople to be effective today have to be the yang. We have to do the exact opposite, and that's where trust absolutely comes into play. Because if all I'm doing is just dialing, creating calls, you're not going to have any chance of success. This morning, I was making some prospecting calls to people who I have not talked to. I know who they are and I know them, but I felt very good about making the calls because there's a connection there somehow. There's some sort of a relationship. There's something that we were able to connect with. And to me, that validates, is it a cold call? To a certain degree it is. I'm going to call it a qualified call because I know who I'm calling. I met one of their cohorts at an event last week. They said to reach out to this person. So I did. So cold call, yes. Qualified call, yes. That's the challenge. That the advent of calling today has shifted. And think about it, there's so much information out on the internet. There's nothing that we can't learn about somebody. And my whole premise is this. For instance, these calls, I was doing research on the internet before I called a person. In other words, it was becoming more and more of a qualified person. And that's the advent. That's where we place the elements of trust into a qualified call, even before the other person has a chance to pick up the phone.
So you feel that you, having done the research on that person, finding reasons why that person would be a good customer for you, would want to buy what you have. You have things in common, like going to the same school or something like that. You feel that doing that work, even though they're picking up the phone and hearing you and your name for the first time, knowing nothing about you, still improves the probability.
Yes. And I'm going to say this for two reasons. One, if I have the ability to help someone, I owe it to them to reach out to them. Let me put this
Aha,
in.
that's from the book.
Right, exactly. That is from the book. Let me put it into context. If I have problems, trust me, talk to my kids, they will tell you that dad has a lot of problems. And I knew that
I'm familiar with the concept.
yeah, yeah, and you, Yoram, could help me solve those problems. I would want you to reach out to me. I would want you to help me. If you did not help me, and I found out later that you could have helped me, I would have been upset. I would have been upset. And that's the whole piece. Now, we'll say I didn't know you beforehand. So somehow you got to break through. You got to break through, but you can help me. That this is the whole reason why salespeople help. Now, the definition of sales is to help others see and achieve what they didn't think was possible. That's the definition of sales, to help others see and achieve what they didn't think was possible. And that's what you're doing, Yoram, when you're reaching out to me. These people I was calling this morning, I know very well that the company they're in, I can help that company. I know I can help them. So I'm going to reach out to them. Now, here's the other piece. We've entered what I call the era of 3D selling. We all know what 3D is. Maybe we should call it 4D or 5D or whatever, but it's at high rate. It's at in fact maybe we just call it 4K selling or 5K selling in terms of resolution. What does that mean? That means the customer is finding out about us through multiple avenues, through multiple ways. It's not just through a phone call. Phone call may be the last thing. They may have heard about us from somebody else. They may have read about us in some sort of online thing. They may have seen a video. They may have seen something, but it is amazing. And this happens to me a lot when I make calls. They know who I am because my reputation's arrived before I did. That makes my call even that much more of a qualified call, right? Because now, hey, you know what? I'm dealing in a very controlled base, very controlled substance. And this is where a lot of small businesses go wrong. They either go very heavy on marketing or they go very heavy on sales. They go very heavy on marketing, but they're going to throw a lot of stuff out on social media. That's a pretty big space out there. Last I looked, there's about 8.5 billion people on the face of the earth. And about 8 billion of them are on Facebook at any one time, or Snapchat or Instagram or whatever. What you got to do is you got to tailor it, be very, very focused, be extremely focused. Same thing with your phone calls. Same thing with your qualified calls. They're very focused. When I get absolutely laser focused, it's amazing what success I'll have.
So let me throw a question.
Yeah.
How long or how much time do you spend qualifying, or I should call it pre-qualifying, a prospect before you decide that's the right person? I mean, on average or a range.
Well, great question. And again, because I'm not going to deal with anybody unless they're in what I call my ICP, my ideal customer profile. There's certain industries that I deal with, that I work with, and unless they fit in that space, I'm not going to do any research. So now, if I know they're in that space, okay, that moves them up a little bit on the qualified. Then if I have a sense as to what their need is, because I know what the type of business they're in within the industry and so forth, that's going to move them up. So what's very interesting is, by me knowing my ICP, my ideal customer profile, I've already done a fair amount of research on you, that I know that if you fit in that space, now it's a matter of doing some research on the individual. Let me do some individual. So we'll say I'm going to be reaching out to you. I naturally would go to Google and I'd put your name in and I'd see what pops up. Now, chances are LinkedIn's probably going to come up first because, I'm going to date myself here, but LinkedIn has become the good housekeeping seal of approval. It's kind of where we go for a clearinghouse of information. And
professional information. Yep.
Right. And that's okay. That's great. So now there may be a cross reference or maybe something else, but I can find information out within 30 seconds, minute or two at the most.
Do you ever go to Facebook and look at some of their social, less professional, more social profile to see if there's something interesting, something that you have in common?
I really don't very often. I
Yeah.
mean, it's just, again, I'm so B2B focused that, you know, again, if I'm going to do a Google search, if it comes up in the first two or three, I'll probably take a look at that. I'll look at their company's website, something of that nature. But then and yeah, and again, it, the level of research you do is going to be commensurate to the size of the deal that you're trying to sell. I
Right.
mean, I'll give you an example. If I'm selling Boeing aircraft, okay, that may be a bad example right now, but if I'm selling Boeing airplanes, there's really only about, I don't know, 300 companies in the world that can buy a Boeing, that can buy a Boeing airplane. So if I'm going to reach out to one of those, I'm going to do probably a lot of research, but I probably already know quite a bit.
Yeah.
Conversely, if what I'm selling is auto insurance, not a whole lot of research I have to do other than, what, I know that the type of automobile insurance that I sell fits best for people in certain age brackets or certain demographics or something like that. Once I know that, good, I'm good to go.
Yeah, and you bring up an interesting point that I remember hearing somebody actually at NSA that said something. He was and I don't remember, and he works with his wife. You may remember who I'm talking about. And he said that he's like the hero, the celebrity in an industry. And I thought, but what he has is good for so many different industries. But when we go back into this, you had this in the book as day 7. Your book is divided into days. I tips for a day, and on day 7 what you have is and you just said it before, your reputation arrives before you do. And the thing is, when you look at two completely different industries, they don't talk. But when you look at within one industry, you know a lot more about them simply by them being in this industry. But it's a lot easier for you to probably sell because your reputation may have already arrived.
That's what's absolutely key. That's the marketing piece. That's the marketing piece. And we have a company's reputation and we have an individual's reputation. Last week, I was speaking at a conference, and several people walked up to me and that I didn't know, and they go, "Oh, you're the sales hunter," because they just knew me as that means my reputation must have arrived before I did. That's absolutely key. Or people reading your LinkedIn post, YouTube video, whatever. But this is absolutely key because think about this. Go back to the phone call again.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I can call and I can get a lot of voicemails. And even on my qualified calls, I get a lot of voicemails. I get that. When I do eventually break through and that person agrees to have a meeting with me, they never do a meeting without first Googling. I love asking people, audiences, this question. How many of you take a meeting with somebody without first Googling them? It's like maybe one hand will go up. That's it. Everybody says, "Oh, I'm going to Google. I'm going to Google that person's name first." Okay, that means your reputation arrives before you do. So that becomes absolutely imperative for us to have that. But that allows some of those cold doors to slowly begin opening up.
Yeah, I use a parallel a parallel statement to that. Jeff Bezos, you know who Jeff Bezos is. He's a very famous astronaut, and he said, "Your not your reputation." He said, "Your brand," and I like this phrase. Your brand is what people say about you when you're not in the room.
Yes.
They have to know who you are, and they hear about it from somebody else, and that's the inbound transferable trust.
I think there is so much there because remember what they hear from somebody else. We've become such a skeptical society, and we have every reason to be skeptical because there's so much just noise out there. But when we hear a trusted source, a friend, somebody we know, say something about somebody, we place a much higher value on it. We place a much higher value on it. That's what's happening out there.
I call it the 4 R's, which really was accidental that it all became ours. It's the referrals, it's reviews, it's recommendations, and it's reputation.
I
So
love it.
I, I don't know. I mean, I came up with the four, and all started with R. This is I did nothing to it because I'm really bad at creating acronyms. Let me go back to your book. On day 9, you said you talked about CFT, a customer facing time, and what you said is the more time you spend with them, and you say facing, which kind of indicates face to face. It kind of alluded to two of the components that I have in the relative trust model, and that is time and intimacy. More time, more intimate, and more intimate, it's we're going beyond the email, beyond the phone call, to even the face to face. What's your take on it?
Totally. I love how you broke that down, because you're right. Intimacy now. I say CFT is like, for instance, right here. Now the audience can't necessarily see this, but you and I are both on video together and we can see each other.
Yeah.
So to me, that qualifies as customer facing time. If I have a phone call with somebody, this morning I had a phone call with a prospect, literally a phone call. Boy, that's unusual.
Yeah.
And it was, in fact, I actually had two of them this morning, and they were great. So I call that customer facing time. I call customer facing time if I can be physically um, right across the table from you, right? Seeing you in the same room, that's great. But I also call CFT in this world that we're in if I'm actively text messaging. This morning, I
Mhm.
had that happen this morning. We had within 5 minutes, there must have been 8 or 9 text messages going back and forth between the two of us. And to me, that's customer facing time. I've also had situations where I may email somebody, they email me back, I email them, and boom, boom, boom. Within the course of 5 minutes, there's half a dozen emails. I call that it's communication that happens in the moment, And what I find so surprising is CFT by salespeople is a lot less than what they realize. A lot less. And it's broken down I love to break it down 2 ways: one with existing customers and one with prospects. And the prospecting time is even less, because they may have CFT, but it's all with existing customers, which is great, which is terrific. But at the end of the day, salespeople are charged with getting new business into the company.
Right. Do you recommend, do you do it yourself? At the beginning, try as early as possible to get on a Zoom call or a Meet or Teams or whatever instead of a phone call.
Yes, I mean, if I can, because there's just something about if I can do face to face on Zoom or Teams or something like that, there is just a little more connectivity, just a little bit more. Now, phone call is fine. Like I said this morning, I had one was with a total prospect, and the call went great. Uh, would it have gone better if we had been on camera? Probably, but I love a good phone call from now and then. I mean, I love a good, because I don't need to be on screen all the time. So again, it just depends on my view is this. I always allow the customer to pick. I let the customer pick. I'm going to default to Zoom or Teams, but if the customer prefers phone, fine, I'll do phone. Because at the end of the day, if that's their preferred communication method, I'm going to have a better call by using their preferred communication method versus my preferred communication method.
I'm definitely with you. The way I do it is after we communicate a little over email, I go, can we have a Zoom call or Meet or any other video conferencing or a phone call, whichever you prefer. But I kind of start with a Zoom or something.
Mm-hmm.
What I found, Albert Mehrabian, I don't know if you're familiar with the name. He's the one that had the 1971 book Silent Messages. He's the one with the 738-55 rule, which people so misquote. And I even looked at the 7% words,
Yes. Yep.
38%
Yep.
tone of voice, 55% body language. People think that this is how you communicate better. That wasn't his research. I actually looked at his research that he did in 68 and 69. And, after you look at this, you go, really? This is how you got to these numbers? but that's fine. The concept is still true. And there's a quote that I used from him at the introduction of the book, where the pages still have Roman numerals instead of the standard ones. And he says, when your message um, contradicts the silent messages contained within, when your words contradict the silent messages contained within them, people distrust what you say. And what I found was that when I talk, and they can not just hear it in my tone of voice, you're talking about a phone call, but when they actually see me and they can see the consistency between what I say and how I say it. I didn't do the stats for my own phone calls, but I found that the ones that start, the relationships that I have that started with a Zoom call or any other video conferencing had a higher probability of turning into a deal, a business.
I totally agree with you. I mean, I'm not gonna argue there at all.
Yeah, but I'm not forcing them.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Day 24 in your book, you said the only good sale is the one leading to the next sale. And so when I read that, I mean, first of all, I was trying to understand, are you talking about a loyal customer? But you're not talking about a loyal customer. You're talking about what I call outbound transferable trust. So it's not getting another deal from the same customer as it is get that customer, one of the 4 R's, to refer you or refer somebody else to you. Tell us more about that.
Well, that's what it is, because if I delight you, you're going to tell other people, and that's the whole premise. And I believe I hate the term closing a sale. I think we open a relationship. My objective is to open a relationship, and when I open a relationship, it's amazing at what can happen. And think about this, and it all is built around trust. Now, relationships don't all have to be trustworthy, because they're going to be relationships. I don't trust that person. I don't trust that person at all. But we're going to give it the benefit of the doubt that I trust this person. And when I trust that person, and they in turn share me with somebody else, that's what I mean by the only good sales, one that relates, creates the next sale, because that is a measurement of two things. One, it's a measurement of me as a person. Am I a person of reputable standing? Because you wouldn't refer my name along unless, and two, my product, my service. If it wasn't working, if it wasn't measuring up, you wouldn't do it. So if I get referrals and name passed along and so forth, that means I'm doing a good job. That's excellent. And what that means also is that I'm undoubtedly creating trust two ways. The customer is having trust in me, but I'm undoubtedly creating trust in the customer. In other words, it's we're both seeing trust in each other's eyes. That is huge, because what I always say is this: in the absence of trust, low price is everything. I'm going to stop and think about that for a moment. In the absence of trust, low price is everything. I may have something that I just don't think it's going to work. I just don't think, but it doesn't cost anything. It's dirt cheap. Okay, I'll buy it. But if it was expensive, no, there's no way I would buy it. There's no way. See, so trust in sales is absolutely paramount, unless what you have to offer is free or pretty close to it.
Yeah, actually, it's funny. When I started doing the trust premium research, I defined 3 terms. The first was the trust preference. So I trust you. I don't know the other person. And by the way, it's a lot easier to say I trust you. I totally distrust the other. Distrusting the other is a proactive action of, it's not that I don't know them. I know that I cannot trust them. So I don't go there. I always, when I do the trust research, the trust premium research, I compare somebody I trust to somebody I don't know.
Right.
Okay. So let's see what premium does trust bring. And so trust preference is the probability that I'm going to choose you over that other person that I don't know because I trust you. That's with one exception in one industry that I did, which I don't remember, that was slightly under 90%. In all other industries, it was over 90%. The
Hmm.
probability is over 90% that I choose you when the price is the same.
Hmm.
But I'm willing to pay a higher price to the person that I trust over somebody I don't know. I call that the trust premium. But what you just said is something that I call the distrust discount.
Yes.
So if I don't, and again, it's not that I distrust you, as I don't know you. There's somebody that I trust and I buy from them. You come in, I don't know anything about you. What is the discount that you need to provide for me to say, well, I'm going to switch. I
Hmm.
trust you and all, but at this price, I'm going to switch. And
Hmm.
even that varies with industries.
It does vary within industry and it varies within action. For instance, I drink a lot of coffee. Now, I go to Starbucks and I pay way too much for coffee. I can get coffee a lot cheaper at some place like Waffle House or even McDonald's. But if I can't find a Starbucks, but there's a Waffle House right there, coffee's a lot cheaper at Waffle House. Will I go into it? No. I will literally forego the coffee because despite it being cheap, I will not consume. Hmm. Now, for those of you in the north, those of you on the west coast, you don't know what Waffle House is. It is a place that you go get waffles,
But they
and
certainly know Starbucks.
people know Starbucks, and the syrup they serve on it is motor oil, which is also substituted for what they have for coffee. So, okay, I just trashed all things Waffle House with that one. So,
Thank you for opening my program to liability.
thank you, and you probably lost them as a sponsor too, so it's okay.
Definitely Waffle House.
What can you
So,
say?
you brought an interesting point. The question is it because you trust Starbucks or is it because of the quality of their product?
Well, that's a great question, but see, I trust Starbucks because of the quality of their product. So, I mean, stop and think about this. What came first, the trust or the product? Um, I'm not sure. I mean, again, you'd have to go all the way back to the beginning. Did I go to Starbucks initially because of somebody's recommendation, or did I go there? I'm not sure. But stop and think about this for a moment. We infer trust on a lot of different things. We could be sitting there saying, "Hey, let's watch Netflix tonight." And what's a show we're going to watch? Now, Netflix is going to give us recommendations based on what we've watched before. But there's also recommendations that you may have received from somebody who you were talking to.
Hmm.
And so, whose recommendations get higher treatment? The recommendations Netflix sends to us or the ones we do? Uh, Depends on our feeling, depends on what we want. Maybe we'll take a look at both. I don't know. So there's different levels of trust, but as a business, Netflix is in the business of giving you recommendations based off of a level of trust that they hope they have built with you. They just hope they have.
Yeah.
Sometimes they hit
You,
it,
you know what?
sometimes they miss.
I wish that Amazon was a little better in that because this drives me crazy. They have all the money in the world to build a good algorithm for recommending the next thing. And you know how you get those recommendations from Amazon? If you like this, you probably will like that. The one that drives me crazy is my air conditioners take filters that are 16 by 24 by 4. And so I just bought a filter or a pair of filters for both air conditioners. They're 16 by 24 by 4. I immediately get an email from Amazon that says, because you bought two filters that are 16 by 24 by 4, you may want to get a filter that is 20 by 25 by 1. And I'm thinking, I just told you that the size of filters for my air conditioner are 16 by 24 by 4. How can a 20 by 25 by 1 fit? So it's still the algorithms are still not perfect, and I'm sure they're not perfect for Netflix either yet.
No, they're giving you credit because they think you're just a landlord with a lot of different homes. So, you probably need, all different sizes. So, they just, figured you were one of those people. So,
Yeah.
no.
By the way, you talked about customer loyalty and trust. To me, the way I break it down is there is the moment of the purchase decision. there is what leads to the purchase decision, and it starts to me more and more and more with transferable, inbound transferable trust. So this is somebody recommended, somebody gave a reference, there are reviews, there's reputation. That is the inbound transferable trust. And then there are things like what are the features, what are competence, personality compatibility, everything that leads to the moment where I say, I am buying. Still doesn't mean that I trust you, but I'm buying from you. It's what happens next, because our decision, our purchase decision, is based on the ratio between what we perceive the value is, what we perceive the price is. Then after the fact, all of a sudden you start realizing the value is not what you thought it is, or the price is not what you thought it is. That's what leads to loyalty and the outbound transferable trust, where they recommend you. Does that make sense?
It does. In fact, I got a question for you. Is trust a bankable asset?
Say more. What do you mean?
Well, in other words, we'll say, we'll just use airlines.
Yeah.
You have a preferred airline. You've flown with them a lot of times. You like them, and you have a bad experience with them. Bad experience. Do you still trust them?
Well, so a couple of things. One is different pieces of research show that we react much so, even research that won its authors the Nobel Prize for Economics, that bad things, bad experiences are much more powerful than positive experiences. However, and this goes into one of my components of trust is the trust that I have in you is the product of your trustworthiness and my trustfulness, my willingness to trust people in general or people like you in particular. Mm-hmm. The fact that I have a certain level of trust towards airlines. I have a certain level of trust towards American Airline, which is here in Dallas, that would be your main airline, because 3/4, or I should say 4/5 of the gates and terminals are American Airlines. So you get everywhere on American. So I use them a lot. And it was every flight perfect? No. But when more and more flights get you to expect a certain level of consistency, one can make you feel really bad, but not to the point that you're going to leave them. Again, it depends on what happens. If the plane crashed, then you're probably going to leave them, or all other airlines.
Literally, we can make a few jokes on that, but we won't. So, yeah. This is the piece that I bring up. It is amazing how life is full of a lot of experiences. They don't always go right. They don't always go wrong. But it's a life of experiences of all types. And we have to bank on our trust. And I think our trust then is kind of transferable. Well, I've typically have gone down this road and it's been able to get me around this traffic. I'm not sure if it will today, but I'm willing to trust it because it normally does get me around this traffic. So I think to a certain degree, we as salespeople, we as people, this comes back to your reputation arrives before you do. We have to be every day putting deposits into our trust accounts every day, every day, because we never know when withdrawals are going to be made. Yep. And like you kind of alluded to, bad experiences sometimes create opportunities to build trust. Not that we want to, but But
it's sometimes that experience, that bad experience, is not really the fault of the airline or whoever it is that provided you with service or a product. It might not be their fault, but the question is how they deal with it. And what one of the examples that I like to use is my shirt is a branded shirt. I would say that today about 95% of my shirts are branded, or in other words, 2 of the 3 shirts that I own are but I used one vendor, and then I switched to somebody, and I don't mind calling them out, Queensboro. And I started buying from Queensboro. And every time after they send it, they send me an email and they ask me, how was your order? Perfect or not perfect, or perfect or less than perfect. So there's not not like a third option. I mean, it's either perfect or it's less than perfect. Well, one time I ordered shirts, and when they arrived, I realized that's not exactly the color that I thought and not exactly the material that I thought. They're still good. I'm still wearing them, but it wasn't what I expected. And I went back to the website and I saw that I got what I ordered, period. They didn't send me something else. But sometimes you look at the
Mhm.
screen, it doesn't look exactly the same. They sent me exactly what I ordered. But when they sent the email, was it perfect or less than perfect? I was like, what do I tell them? I can't tell them it was perfect because it's not, but it's not their fault. I clicked on less than perfect. Not an hour later, I get a phone call from them. What was wrong with the order? And I'm like, look, this is not your fault. It's you just only gave me two options, perfect or less than perfect. Um, it wasn't the material, it wasn't the color that I thought. Don't worry, I'm going to wear it, and it's my fault. It's not your fault. It's my fault. We're going to refund you. Don't refund me. This is not your fault. This is my fault. Don't refund me. No, we're going to refund you. You can order it. Keep the shirts. But look, I'm going to wear these shirts. So this is not good. This was kind of an absurd conversation where they're trying to force me to take a refund. I'm trying to force them not to give me a refund. And guess what? They won because they did have the details of the credit card. So they refunded me. You know what, Mark? Every time somebody asks me about branded shirts, bam, that's where I go. To your question before, what would happen if all of a sudden I had a bad experience with them? They banked enough trust with me that it's not going to make a big difference.
You know, I want to thank you for that trust shirt that you gave me for my birthday. It was clearly that color that didn't quite come out right. So
I didn't give you a trust shirt for your birthday. I didn't even know that you have a birthday. Do you have birthdays at this age?
back to the show. Back to the
Back
show.
to the show.
Ladies and
Back
gentlemen, you're listening to the Trust Show with Yoram Solomon, PhD.
And losing trust by the minute. So we're getting close. We're over. We're over time. Time passed was with you. Let me ask you one last question before the next thing I'm going to ask is how can my viewers find you? But before we get there, what is one common prospecting mistake that people do that causes them to lose trust?
Yeah, the fact that they are expecting the customer to buy from them. They're expecting no. You've got to be delivering value. Every call, every message you send, it's giving them something of value to them. That's the biggest single thing that salespeople do to lose trust when they call and say, "Hey, buy for me. Hey, buy for me. Buy for me." You're not going to build any trust that way at all.
That's great. That's great advice. Mark, congratulations again on the book. You just told me that I'm very honored to have the first printing of that book. Mark, I know that my viewers are going to want to get in touch with you. What's the best way to get in touch with you?
Well, the best way is thesaleshunter.com. That's the website. And yes, Hunter's my real last name. So you just go thesaleshunter.com. Also got 2 podcasts. If you have one podcast, I got to do 2 because I just got to stay ahead of you, Yoram.
Right. Yep.
One podcast, logically called thesaleshunter.com, or excuse me, the Sales Hunter podcast. And the other podcast is Sales Logic. And both completely different podcasts, but both all focus.
What's in the different podcasts?
Well, the Sales Hunter podcast is one like this where we have guests. I have guests on the show, and I also do single topic shows, very short 5-minute ones for me. The other show, Sales Logic, never had a guest. I do it each Saturday morning with my co-host, Meredith Elliott Powell. And we just take one single sales topic and we discuss it. We talk a book. We take a question, an audience from the question. The cool thing is we actually are doing it live on the internet. So we have quite a good size live audience, whether they're finding us on LinkedIn, YouTube, Facebook, whatever. And then, of course, it goes out, a week later as a podcast.
Yeah, and I used to listen to that one until I realized that it's just not legal to wake up at 7 a.m. on Saturday.
At 7 a.m. on Saturdays, I've already been up for a few hours, and it's just absolutely outstanding.
You're a machine, Mark. Mark, I really appreciate. I really appreciate you being on this show. This was very illuminating, and I hope our viewers are going to log on to your shows and get your books. By the way, this is the latest book, but it's not the only book. Thank you for being on the show, Mark.
Thank you. Great show.
If you enjoyed this episode, like it, subscribe to this channel, and get informed when I release more episodes like that. And remember, the answer to this question will have the biggest impact on your personal and professional success or failure. Can you be trusted?